Excellent. Welcome all to our second edition of Bacardi Talks. Today, we're incredibly excited to have, again, another incredible industry innovator and leader. Today, we'll be joined by Elizabeth Blau in a little bit. But before we get going, got some housekeeping to do. My name's Brian Connors. I'm the director of the Bacardi Center of Excellence. And as I like to say, the keeper of all things fun today. We are recording, and this is also live. Before we get into today, I always have the great honor to introduce our outstanding dean, Dr. Michael Chang. Dr. Chang, can you say hello for us, sir?
Thank you, Professor Connors. I'll give you a 5% raise right there. I'm just kidding. No, as Brian said, welcome. I'm very pleased that you are all available to join us here today on our second edition of Bacardi Talks at the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. For those of you who are new to the Chaplin School and FIU, here are some fun facts. We are the fourth largest public university in the country, the third largest hospitality program in the country, and the first to open a very successful campus for hospitality management in partnership with Tianjin University of Commerce in China. Our school have graduated over 17,000 alumni worldwide, and our online bachelor's program is ranked #1 in the country for the last 5 consecutive years. We are ranked top 50 in the world, and our students represent the future of our country and our global industry with 38% Hispanic and Latinos and 35% international. We are deeply invested in our industry and our community, and during this pandemic, we raised almost 1.6 million thanks to our partners like Bacardi and Badia Spices to support laid off and furloughed restaurant employees in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties in partnership with the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, which is also run and operated by our staff and students at FIU. Once again, thank you. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here today to our second edition of Bacardi Talks. And I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you very much, Dean Chang. Always a pleasure, sir. Someday I'm gonna actually see you live again. I don't know when that's gonna be.
Maybe.
Yeah, either which way, we're gonna have some fun today. Hey, quick little Bacardi update on our program. For those of you that have been following us on our fun podcast, it's great. We're close to 1,200 downloads, so please enjoy 2 bar stools and a knife. We're always having a good time with that. Bacardi Teach, also a great success. Thousands of people have now taken courses. We're in the hundreds as far as certificates being awarded. That's individuals that have taken 5 of our courses successfully and so forth. Hey, our Bacardi scholarship winners are going to be announced soon, so we're really excited about that. The internship program, which is also highly selective, is going to be announced as well. The individuals that applied for that, thank you for doing that. We'll be reaching out for that as well. And hopefully soon, we all be able to see the Bacardi classroom live on campus in room 175. It's going to have a great new look, really pop, and we're really excited to see that coming forward. So that's it on my Bacardi update. So today, I'm excited to get into our conversation with Elizabeth Blau. Now, many of you from the restaurant segment have heard of Elizabeth, the acclaimed restaurateur, as well as TV personality. I watched her season 3 on Restaurant Startup. I did, Elizabeth, you know. As well as award-winning author, James Beard nominee, and also the founder of the Women's Hospitality Initiative, which we're also going to be talking about today because that's an important topic for us. So without further ado, Elizabeth, welcome to Bacardi Talks.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. All this Bacardi talk, I'm sad I don't have a mojito in front of me, but maybe when I get home. Yeah,
exactly. Just give it time. Give it time. There's always time for a cocktail on that. So Elizabeth, we're going to be talking a little bit about the early years. We're going to talk about as well as what's going on in the industry, and then we're going to turn it over to some of our special guests today that we're going to talk about some of your new initiatives for the women in hospitality. But I get the chance to talk a little bit about the early years. And kind of, I'm real curious now, you and I talked briefly about this before we went live today on where and what was the tipping point, you know? So you were, and I have permission to say this, the taco girl outside of Hartford, Connecticut. You went to school, not for hospitality, but then something switched and you went back to graduate school for hospitality and this illustrious career began. But Elizabeth, tell me a little bit about what was the tipping point? What happened? You said, this hospitality, the restaurant segment, this is for me.
Sure. Well, I was indeed the taco girl at happy hour at a restaurant called Pancho McGee's in West Hartford, Connecticut. I went to Georgetown undergrad for government international relations, but I started working in restaurants in high school, and I continued all through college. And for me, I thought it was my passion, but I didn't think that was going to be my career, because I didn't want to be a chef. I didn't necessarily want to run a restaurant, but I knew I loved the industry. And so actually, I went to work for United Liquors when I graduated in Bridgewater, Mass. And so I got to see and learn the industry from the supplier side. I then moved to New York City and worked for one of the big party and floral decorating companies. And so I kept circling around, and I actually moved home and was applying to law school, and I was working as an intern for the state's prosecuting attorney. And I thought, this is nothing like TV. This is not fun. And so I applied to one school. I figured, let's pick the best. Tie it for the best with FIU. And so I went to Cornell, and really the program was much more like getting an MBA. I mean, there was finance, there was statistics, there was accounting, there was real estate. I was incredibly fortunate there, because that's where I was introduced to the Macchioni family. Two of the brothers, Mario and Marco. Marco did the EME program, Cornell's program in France, and Mario was 2 years ahead of me at Cornell. So
That's amazing, and you mentioned Sirio as well, legendary restaurateur from the Macchioni family. How did that actually, take place? Because then did he say, hey, you're going to come work for me at Le Cirque? Or how did that transition take place? Now, I believe he was a family friend. There was some connection there, but hey, you know what?
It's definitely a funny story. So I was in New York with Professor Kelly, my restaurant professor, and we were at Lutece with Andre Soltner. We had read his book, and we were fortunate enough to have an early dinner as a class at the restaurant. And I was going to be the graduate assistant. So two of the graduate assistants and I joined Professor Kelly to have a drink with Sirio at Le Cirque. And so it turned out it was his birthday. And so he invited us for dinner. So I could be one of the few people in the world that had two dinners, one at Lutece and one at Le Cirque in the same night. But we were talking, and his wife loved Giuliana loves gambling. She goes to Atlantic City, and they were planning a trip to Las Vegas. And I said, well, if you want to meet with Steve Wynn, I'd be happy to arrange it. The Wynns were family friends. Needless to say, when Sirio called my professor to see if I could make the introduction, the professor was thought I was nuts, and was not too happy with me, but I explained that I could make the introduction. And so I started the deal, but, working for Sirio, and then somewhere in the process, after a couple years, Mr. Wynn stole me away, and I moved to Las Vegas to be the vice president of restaurant development for Bellagio. So that was the extraordinary time where we got to bring some of the most extraordinary chefs from around the world, many celebrity chefs, to do their second restaurant. Michael Mina, Todd English, Jean George. Jean George had more than, it was not his second restaurant, but it was an extraordinary time.
Yeah, that was an amazing time, because I remember a lot of individuals I either went to culinary school with or from undergrad were traveling out and taking their first quote unquote, real jobs out in Las Vegas. Now, before that, and I know I'm jumping back a little bit here, but what was the scene like in Vegas before that? I mean, now that people travel to Vegas and you were part of that, creating the culinary scene, but what was going on before? And did you see the need, or did Steve Wynn kind of say, hey, Elizabeth, this is what we're going to do?
Well, originally it was only going to be Le Cirque and Circo at Bellagio, and the rest was going to be internally developed. So that was definitely the original plan. Emeril Lagasse had a, fabulous restaurant at the MGM. Jean-Louis Paladin had opened Napa. And Wolfgang Puck. I mean, Wolfgang Puck really, paved the way for all of us with his Spago and the Forum shops. So that's what really, led the impetus to the conversation with Sirio, because, I had read and, and heard about how well Spago was doing. And so, I kind of tongue in cheek said, well, look at how well Spago is doing. Wouldn't it be great to have Le Cirque? And that little tongue in cheek comment, parlayed into, an actual business deal. And so after Cornell, I moved to New York to work for the Macchionis, to open Osteria del Circo and Le Cirque. And I negotiated that deal to go out there. But as I said, those were going to be the only two. When I went to work for Mr. Wynn and it became evident that there was a restaurant called Retail Cafe, and it was next to Armani and Hermes. And so I thought, you have all this, high, super luxury branded retail, maybe it would make sense, to have another, kind of outside restaurant. And so, I'd like to say that it was some kind of science, but the restaurant had already been designed. It had a pizza kitchen. It obviously had to be different than Circo, which had a pizza oven. And so that's where, I kind of dug into my files. And, at the time when I lived in Boston, Todd and Olivia English were acquaintances. And so I picked up the phone and called, and, and then it just, kind of snowballed from there. We had been friends with Jean-Georges. And he flew out, and Prime Steakhouse was born. And obviously there's two extraordinary, at the time, seafood restaurants in America. One was Le Bernardin, and the other was Aqua on either coast. And so, it just kind of went from there. We had a lobby bar, and I thought, this lobby is overlooking one of the most extraordinary Dale Chihuly chandeliers that's ever been made. And so we made a deal with Petrosian Caviar to do a caviar bar. And so the creativity was really limitless. I worked with extraordinary people like Gamal Aziz and Kevin Stussy, to create this amazing portfolio.
Yeah. Then take us to kind of today, where Blau Associates, you're the CEO, founder of. You have restaurants, you're still working your magic today. But what was, again, that transition for you to say, I'm going to go out on my own, create my own restaurant concepts, open my own restaurants? We know your husband's also a phenomenal chef, but what happened there?
So Mr. Wynn sold the company to MGM. I stayed on and worked for MGM for another 2 years. But what was extraordinary about working for Mirage Resorts and working for Steve and Elaine Wynn was it still felt like a family. And coming from working from the Macchioni family to the Mirage family, MGM was definitely a corporation, and it operated in a very different way. And so that's where, I said, okay, I've gotten my experience, but now's the time to do my own thing. So luckily, Mr. Wynn had bought the Desert Inn and was planning to launch Wynn. So it was a nice first consulting client. And then my dear friend and celebrated Miami chef, Carrie Simon, and I opened our first restaurant, which was Simon Kitchen and Bar at the Hard Rock Casino. And so we got to take everything that we had learned at Bellagio and the attention to detail on food, service, cocktails, wine, but in this fun rock and roll setting, and got to wear blue jeans and, play, incredible music. And of course, every artist who played in the joint, from David Bowie to Mick Jagger, came through the restaurant. And so we were next door to Nobu, and it was a great partnership with Peter Morton. And that really launched the restaurant side. So now we have a consulting side of our business. As you mentioned, my husband, Chef Kim Cantinwala, and I got married, and we started opening our own restaurants. Unfortunately, about 6 years ago, Carrie Simon passed away from a horrible neurodegenerative disease. But we had a great time together. And then, as I said, my husband and I, we have 3 restaurants in Las Vegas. We're also partnered with Buddy Valastro, the Cake Boss.
Yeah.
We have a great restaurant in the Venetian. We have our Honey Salt, and then one of our restaurants, luckily we were reconcepting. So it was perfect timing to be closed during this pandemic. So, we'll relaunch this fall. And then we have 5 others in Vancouver, Canada, in another casino project. So we have another Honey Salt, we have another signature steak and seafood, but it's so incredible to work in British Columbia because our access to seafood and produce from the Okanagan is really quite extraordinary. So those restaurants are getting a slower reopening because everything was shut down because they are in a casino. But Honey Salt in Las Vegas has been plugging away. We never closed. We obviously had to close our dining room, but we were fortunate never to have to close our operation. And we kept 25 people employed. So very proud of that. And I'm sure their families are very appreciative that, we were able to stay open.
Great, that's great. So, this next question, I have kind of more of a professor twist to it, if you will. So, you mentioned Professor Kelly. So I got to bring up one of my favorites and one of your favorites, Dr. Chris Muller. Hey, Chris, you there, sir?
I am. How are you guys? Hi. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Oh,
it's
my
been a long
goodness.
time.
I know. And I heard you retired. Could you do that?
Well, it helped that the university I worked at thought it was a good time for me to go. So they helped me retire. So actually, I'm in the middle of the move from Boston to Onset. I heard you might have been on Cape Cod recently.
I was just on Cape Cod for a month.
Well, we have a small retirement condo. I'm actually in the basement where I'm going to have an office in Onset, which is just over the Bourne Bridge. Yeah, right on Buzzards Bay. So that's where we're settling in. I'm going to be working with. And I'm going to start working, doing projects with my old friend and partner, Chef Halloran. Brian and I have.
Brian.
He's down in Newport or Jamestown, and we've reconstituted Gastronomical Adventures, which is the name of the very successful restaurant. Oh, let me change that. The very successful failure of a restaurant that he and I had on Cape Cod in Centerville 40 years ago this summer.
I never knew that.
That's we were partners. So, Elizabeth, you and I share quite a number of things. One is we both worked for United Liquors. I worked for Mike Ty and was the first connoisseur of Boston when they started that division. And the Michelle Cravat division that we had. Yeah. And then, of course, Cornell. What we don't share is that I've had 2 very successful failures for my restaurant companies, one in Cape Cod and one in Orlando back in
I've had a couple. I've had a couple too.
Yeah, but I haven't had the successes that you've had. That's the difference. So to stop talking about us, and I do apologize that I never had you lecture at BU when I was dean or when I was teaching there, even though you said you would. I never got my act together to get it to work. So we'll have to figure out another way to make this work.
I would love that.
And so the question is, you and I, we do share a lot. You're considerably younger than I am, but over the last 5 decades of my restaurant life, one of the things that I've benefited from was this American restaurant, sort of the Pax Americana. It was the greatest time for, my friend Giuseppe Pizzati would say, it was the best time for restaurants in the world's history. It's not quite that right now. Not everybody likes the term restaurant apocalypse, but here we're seeing a lot of challenge. If you were to start again, let's say you're back at Cornell and you're getting ready to go, and instead of taking the job with Sirio and going on from there, where would you put your energies today? Where do you think the opportunity is for a young person like you were, like I was 10 or 15 years before you, thinking about going out and starting a career?
That's a great question. And, there are people out there quoting numbers that 85% of restaurants in America, could possibly go out of business. And so that is a restaurant apocalypse. I think that, so much is technology based, and I'm fascinated by the ghost kitchens. I think that, this fast casual, but, with an eye to quality, like Shake Shack and Chick-fil-A, have done. I would definitely stay away from fine dining. I think that, those are the biggest challenges. But, I would never trade, doing something and working for people that you feel passionate about. And I think that in our business, there's a very important blend between, the academic side that we get in school and the practical side. So whenever I lecture at school, I always talk about internships and your summer job. And, so much can be, learned by, people who, eventually become your mentors. And so, I think that, for some of the people graduating, and I've had a number of conversations, don't sweat it. Think of this year as a postgraduate year, do an internship, if you can, go live at home, and if you can afford it financially. But it's a very difficult time for our industry, and so looking and trying to pivot into those areas that are tech focused, that are again, more limited service. But my passion has always been quality and quality ingredients. So I think you can have a happy marriage between the two.
Simple but elegant, we used to say. As a sort of quick little follow-up, I think the idea is that it's we're facing this ongoing forest fire, and like any forest fire, some of the old growth disappears, but 12 to 18 months later, there's these green shoots, this new movement. I think restaurants will always be part of the American culture, the world culture. We're just going to see a lot of new startups. Maybe if the Dean and Brian and Bacardi would consider something, we could put together some kind of program at FIU to help those green shoots expand. Maybe after we settle down a little bit more, after the end of the year or into 2021, Elizabeth, we can get you to come and be part of that movement if the Dean will have me.
Thank you, Dr. Muller. Oh, you hear that, Chris? I heard Michael Chang say absolutely. Muller, always a pleasure to see you, sir. So
thank you for having me.
Great to see you, Chris.
It's the best.
Sorry for the strolled in amnesia land there, everybody that doesn't know Dr. Chris Muller, legendary restaurant professor that Elizabeth and both of us had up at Cornell University. All right, enough of that stuff, but we just had a great transition there, even though never give Professor Muller a microphone, see what happens. But he did have a great transition for us, Elizabeth, and we're going to talk a little about today in the restaurant space, you said some really kind of poignant things there. Are we looking at the new normal now? I know that's been the cliche overused a lot now, but is what we're seeing now, and I do agree that fine dining is going to have some challenges. There's always going to be a time and place for special occasions. You mentioned Le Bernardin or some of the other classics that are out there, but is this going to be our new normal in hospitality where now only the strong will survive?
I think a lot of the problem is being caused by the landlords. Our rent is one of our largest fixed costs. I can tell you on some of our spaces, we have landlords who feel like they're entitled to 100% of their rent when, we can't even seat 50% of the dining room. And so remember that at 6 feet and, in the occupancy levels, my 140 seat restaurant doesn't necessarily become 70, it becomes 50. And while most of the country is enjoying, this idea of outdoor dining, it's 115 degrees today in Las Vegas, and probably maybe not 100 in Miami, but the humidity's up there. And so, that becomes a challenge. What happens in New York in October, November, if we're still at outside dining? Yet, these landlords are wanting 100% of their rent. So we need federal intervention. We need, more stimulus. Otherwise you're going to see the extinction. So I don't think, it's a problem with the restaurant formula. I think this is, completely pandemic related. There's always going to be attrition. There's always, that figure that 25 to 30% of restaurants will fail in the first 4 years. It's a tough business, it's a volatile business, but if you love it and it's in your blood, you're kind of stuck with it. So I just think that we have to to forge ahead. We're going to need more assistance, but anybody going into this without strong financial footing is not going to survive. So yes, it is very Darwinian survival of the fittest, but unfortunately for those who are going to lose a lifetime of work, there's no fairness in this, and it's really devastating. So support your local restaurants.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. I saw that recent video that came out that was supporting all your local restaurants that are out there. So please, if you can, even if it's just to go right now, help them out as best as you can. So it's all good. So the business model, I think we're all in agreement, even with Dr. Muller going there, that it needs to change slightly, but there's some hope there. So, hey, let's do a quick little shift here because I definitely want to spend some time talking about your women's hospitality initiative. Now, I need a little help though, because I'm going to ask my colleague as well as friend Heidi Vargas, the Vice President of On-Premise for Bacardi North America, to join us. And Heidi, I'm going to throw this section over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Hi, Elizabeth. It's so good to see you. Just to familiarize the audience with my history with Elizabeth, although I've never met her directly in person, I told her earlier I've been a fangirl my whole life. And as she explained the process of opening Bellagio, I got to see that firsthand because I was a part of the opening team on the beverage side, helping run the beverage department. And then later on, I became the beverage director. So all of those amazing chefs that you brought on board, I have to tell you, talking to you now, you've completely influenced my career because as I developed within the leadership opportunity within Bellagio, I as well went to the James Beard House and got to make cocktails alongside Julian Serrano and John George and Michael Mina. And having that experience, you can imagine, just exploded my career. So a huge kudos to you and thank you for all of your inspiration. But we have a little surprise. We have a video question from your pal and longtime friend, Chef Michelle Bernstein. So let's hear what she has to ask you.
Hi, Elizabeth. Sending you much love, distant hugs and kisses from Miami, and I'm probably one of your greatest fans. So half of the graduates from culinary programs are women, yet only a small percent move up to leadership roles. Why do you think that is, and what can other organizations and people do to change that?
Oh, so great to see, Michelle. Thank you for that video. That is really the whole crux of why we founded the Women's Hospitality Initiative in Las Vegas. An incredible woman, Joanna James, did a documentary film called A Fine Line, and I recommend that all of you Google it and take a look. It's really an incredible documentary, and not that number really was shocking to me if I thought about it, but in watching this documentary and really thinking about it, it was kind of a tremendous punch in the gut to think that these women are setting out for a career, and yet they're not getting to leadership levels. And I thought as a woman CEO that it was part of my responsibility to take action and make sure that there was some change. And so we decided to, instead of doing a global initiative or a national initiative, to try and focus this on one city. And in the learning process, I also read a tremendous article that was done by Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In Foundation, as well as the McKinsey Group, and it's called The Broken Rung, like a rung on a ladder. And so, we've always talked about the glass ceiling, and, women can't break the glass ceiling, but this study showed that the issue is that women and men are entering the workforce at equal numbers, so either out of high school or out of college. But women are falling behind on that first rung, on that first management job. And so that was kind of a shock to me. And so I thought, well, if they're falling behind, at their first management position, then something was wrong at the high school level, or something was wrong at the college level, that we weren't teaching our women the leadership, the mentorship, the advocacy skills that they needed to gain the confidence to get that first management job. Maybe it's as simple as how to ask, how to work with male allies. And so as we started to do our research, we could not find anywhere, not even in the US, but anywhere in the world where there was a leadership in hospitality. I mean, many leadership classes for women, but not specifically for leadership for women in hospitality. And so I am thrilled to announce that this fall, the Culinary Institute of America and UNLV will be launching the first ever women's leadership course. It'll be a joint venture between the two schools. And so right now, we have a focus to try and save our whole restaurant industry because it's so devastating. But we still have to keep an eye on making sure that, again, that we're just teaching these basic skills to make sure that everybody has a fair advantage.
That's so awesome, and it's so much needed in our industry, and that's something that I'm really passionate about too. Again, kind of being in the boardroom executive side of a spirits company, it's very male dominated as well. And one thing that we have tried to do with our Bacardi Women in Leadership program is develop that next level of talent and fill that pipeline. And we talk about the broken rung all the time, and how do we encourage, to your point, speak up in the boardroom and raise your hand and have the courage. And I felt that even as a young professional coming into a boardroom, or, especially at Bellagio, and you're sitting in these kind of meetings with all, you get asked your opinion, and George, like, my opinion doesn't matter. And you quickly realize that they're asking those questions because your opinion does matter. So I appreciate that, because so much of that confidence building that's needed. And then you talked about the leadership potential and finding that mentor and advocate. How do you feel about how important it is to have that advocate for you and that mentorship for these young ladies?
You know what? It's absolutely invaluable. And, the thing about our Women's Hospitality Initiative that's different from the Me Too movement, this is about men and women working together. That's the only way that this is going to work. We have to move beyond Me Too, because as women become more leaders, it's going to naturally, not be an issue. And so, we are very focused on the future ahead. Every one of my original mentors were men who gave me the confidence and the belief and the ability that I can do it. But I can tell you, when we sat down with one of the casino CEOs to ask about money, because we had to fundraise to start our initiative, and he brought his CFO with him, who was a woman, to be part of the conversation. And she started in a far more junior level in the accounting department, and he was part with another group of people of mentoring her. And when he was ready to promote her, they told me the story that the first thing she said was, "I'm not ready." And he said, "Yes, you are ready." And so, to be able to have those kind of advocates, to have male allies, is going to be critical in this process. I am extraordinarily fortunate to, have people like Skip Bronson and Tom Kelly, to have a strong, father who, instilled the confidence in me. Sirio Macchioni, Steve Wynn. Not everybody as the good fortune to have an all-star lineup, but whoever your advocates are, if they believe in you and they can help you, build those rungs, then it's a win-win. And so, whether your advocates are male or they're female, having those industry mentors are critical, I think, in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always want somebody who really speaks on your behalf when you're not in that room. And you brought up a good point about, as women, we sometimes don't go for those roles because as we read the job description, we'll say, oh, I have 8 out of 10 of those. So I'm missing these 2 things that they're requiring. And men, they're like, I got this. I got 8 out of 10. I'm in. So I do think that there's a perception we need to work on as women within our own self, saying like, not only should I be told I'm good enough, but I need to work on that for myself and, others as well. So we talked about kind of getting through this pandemic, and, mental health is a big topic of concern, especially within the hospitality industry. And there's a lot of layoffs and furloughs and just struggling out there. The media is negative. We talked about 85% of restaurants may not open again. And so how do you just get away from all that and just take a good wellness break and make sure that you're keeping mentally healthy?
It's so critical, especially, for me. Not only am I a working mom, so I have a teenager and my husband to make sure that everybody is mental health is well, but, the entire team, because I can tell you in the early days of the pandemic, when we were all uncertain about the future and what was going to happen, I felt those eyes on me every day when I walked into Honey Salt, like, do we have a job? Are we staying open? And so, for me, living in Las Vegas, as you know, Heidi, we are so blessed with Mount Charleston, and Red Rock is only a few miles from my house. So hiking and outdoor activities. We did take a break and have a vacation on Cape Cod. And on my last day, somebody plowed into me on a bicycle. So if you saw the rest of my outfit, you would think it was quite funny because I've got shorts and my leg in a cast on a scooter. So my mental health is a little more cerebral right now, but luckily I'm with my mom and dad who are taking great care of me. But that balance is critical, and it's really difficult for people living in, New York City and other places where, it's just hard to get, some fresh air, but, having that balance. And, for some people, because I travel so much, or I did travel so much, my office was at home. But for some people, this whole idea of working at home and being at home is very difficult. And, that is really, I think adding to some of the stress and anxiety and some of the absolute craziness that you read about in the newspaper every day.
Yeah. Going back to your comment about when you walked first into Honey Salt when the pandemic first started, and people were looking to you for kind of like, they needed your confidence, like, are we going to get through this? Are we going to be okay? 5-6 months later, I'm sure that they're still looking at you. So how do you keep your cool and keep your team motivated at this point when it seems that, that this isn't making a turn anytime soon? How do you go about your leadership to make sure that everybody is still engaged and feels positive?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that I learned from some of my great female mentors in Las Vegas, like Elaine Wynn and Diana Bennett and Jan Jones, our former mayor, is that philanthropy is really one of the core pillars of our company. And so while my job literally is to dream up the most delicious, delectable, dishes, and I post these beautiful things that I cook or I am inspired by on Instagram, the reality is that hundreds of thousands of people are out of work in Las Vegas. And so the idea that, while there's an abundance of food on one side, but that there are people that are really triple threat, that they're homebound, that they don't have financial means to get takeout or delivery. And we're in the middle of a pandemic and they have underlying or not underlying severe health issues, was really just untenable. So in addition to creating a marketplace and doing Secret Burger live cooking demos and selling kits and family style meals, we also launched a program called Delivering with Dignity. It's a private partnership with over 30 nonprofit organizations who identify these triple threat, high risk people in our community. And we've partnered with 4 other restaurants in our community. And as of last week, we had gotten over 100,000 meals delivered directly to the doorstep of those most vulnerable in our community. And the food heroes, as we call them, are an army of volunteers who come to the restaurants, pick up the food, and then deliver it with safe protocols and social distancing, right to the doorsteps. And so, our team knows that, not only are we performing the best that we can for, our regular customers, that we are putting that same love and energy into, this food in the community. And, some of these people, have never had a chef prepared restaurant meal. And so, it's really critical in these times to, to reinforce that, as difficult as the situation is financially, I don't think we've made money in months, but again, we've been able to keep people employed, and we've been able to do good for our community. And so, my husband and I hold ourselves to those high standards, as well as our team. And, I hope that keeps our Honey Salt family going.
Absolutely. And it's not any surprise that you've done that to support the community, because you've been all about the Las Vegas community since you've been there. And to your point, it's been, all of the industry has been hit hard, but Vegas in particular, when it's built on hospitality, I can't imagine another city that's hurting more in the US except for Vegas. So again, not to discredit the others, but I know personally what that feels like. My last thing for you, Elizabeth, is again, just thank you so much for what you're doing for women in the industry and for leading us and inspiring us and for continuing the initiative that you are behind the hospitality initiative. My last kind of thing for you is just any last advice to young professionals out there that are getting ready to embark in a very much male-dominated world behind culinary and hospitality. What is some maybe advice you would have given to your younger self that we can give these ladies today?
You touch on a point. I think, that women are sometimes toughest on ourselves. And, without a doubt that, example you gave of do I check every box on the resume? And don't be hard on yourself, and, enjoy this time. This is a time for exploration, to take a class, to push yourself. I was much more inclined to the English and writing and marketing side of things, but, take that, extra economics or math class. Take something, that you're not comfortable, get out of your comfort zone. But, you are your own best advocate. And so, having that self-confidence, in your abilities, and be ready to push the envelope, and never take no, but you can not take no in a nice and in a diplomatic way, and no one is going to advocate for you. So if you want something, you have to ask for it, and you have to push, and you have to, advocate for yourself. Somebody can always say no, but, at least, you've done your best.
I hear that. Absolutely. Advocate for yourself, and and raise your hand and put yourself out there. I agree 100%. So it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And again, massive, massive fangirl of you. And thank you for everything you've done, not only for me personally, and probably that's just a weird comment because again, we've not met, but just everything that you've done to outline all of the ways of working in Vegas and the transformation of that city. I got to see it firsthand, and I just appreciate your time very much. So let's turn it back to Brian, and he's going to close it out.
Yes, thank you so much, Heidi. And of course, thank you, Chef Michelle Bernstein. She was recording that live from her studio today. So it's great to have Michelle there. So Elizabeth, you've had a lot to say here. This has been fantastic. I love some of your insights. I love the direction you're going, particularly with the women in hospitality, because I'm really looking forward to doing more with that. We know you're having a conversation with Dean Chang in regards to that, but we look forward to having you again sometime soon. That'd be great. Any closing thoughts before we sign off and say thank you to everyone?
This has been great fun. I think that, it's a new way that we have to communicate with one another. And so, I really enjoy doing this. And, I hope some of the questions that we've addressed have helped anybody in the audience. But stay safe, wear a mask, support your local restaurants, and all we can do is really, communicate, send letters to our Congress people to pass the stimulus. 1 in 4 jobs in America that have been lost are in the hospitality industry, 1 in 4. And so our industry has been tremendously hard hit. And as Chris Muller says, like, we are resilient, we'll come back. But of all of the crises I have lived, this is truly unprecedented, and it's not just here in the U.S. It's around the world, and it's not just restaurants and chefs. It's farmers and fishermen and the musicians and the PR companies and all of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that also support and live from our industry. So,
and imagine trying to get married during all this, right? So.
I not even believe it, but you're getting married in one of my favorite heavenly places.
There you go. Mine too. And Muller can figure that out himself. Dr. Chang, closing thoughts, sir.
I just want to thank Elizabeth again. This is awesome. Everything you say has been on point, and we certainly would love to collaborate some more with you on the Women's Initiative. Thank you so much.
That's
perfect.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You got it. And Elizabeth, we saw our friend that was actually watching as well. So we will have our next Bacardi Talks on October 8th with another legendary restaurateur that was
very legendary.
Maybe his restaurants was named today, and maybe he was also watching. So Drew, we look forward to having you up next. So it's gonna be good. And Dr. Muller, thank you for coming out of your basement. Always a pleasure to see you guys. Elizabeth, everyone for watching. On behalf of, thank you, Chris. Yeah. On behalf of the Bacardi Center of Excellence at FIU Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, we look forward to seeing you next time. As Elizabeth said, support your local restaurants, wash your hands, and be safe.